right, everybody, welcome to NorCal Sports Network. And this is the same hat that Brock Purdy's dad wears. Chat loves it when Marty Lurie comes on.
Anytime you lose a game this time of year, when you can't go backwards, it's a problem.
All right, everybody, welcome on in NorCal Sports Network. Another day, another run or two, and another loss. Giants lose it this time 4-2 to the Diamondbacks, who are coming off a 4-game losing streak of their own. And the Giants have created their own, 3-game losing streak, 6 out of 7, and something like 10 out of 15, 11 out of 15. We'll get to all that. First, let us thank our sponsor of the show, Chapman Law Group. Chapman Law Group, located in Marin, licensed in California. Give Chapman Law Group a call for all your legal needs. You've got a personal injury situation, make sure you reach out to Chapman Law Group at 415-613-9483. Let them know NorCal Sports Network sent you. They also do living trust. They do document preparation, represent you, whatever you need. Chapman Law Group. Make sure you give them a call, guys. Someday you're going to need an attorney, so you got to remember that. Chapman Law Group. All right, guys. Lou, another disastrous performance by the Giants offense. This time they do crank out 7 hits. Rafael Devers and Elliot Ramos strike out 7 times between them. The last one of Ramos was a call outside that now it looks, that was ball, gets rung up. Melvin gets tossed in between innings. Probably saw the video, my guess, and then started yelling, got chirped, got tossed.
Wait a minute, but that was in the 9th inning.
That was in the 8th. That was after the
Are you talking about the one that was actually a double? He thought that was a home run?
No, I'm talking about the strikeout, the called strikeout. Yeah, with
Devers. That was
and I'm not talking about Devers. I'm talking about Ramos.
I'm sorry. I thought that was the 9th for some reason. You're right. That was the 8th.
Talking about Ramos getting called strike 3, and then
it was inside.
No, it was outside.
Oh, he's right-handed. Yeah, I mean, it was outside.
Yeah. So, Lou, are you with us?
Yeah, I'm thinking of the bats. There were so many strikeouts tonight back to back, so I'm thinking where the ball was.
And then we got the home run that went a double. You know, if the fan had just let that go, I think it hits the top of the wall and bounces over.
Yeah, that's a questionable call because originally I thought it was, first of all, a home run. Then maybe it was interference, but the fan never really hit it. But, it's more of those judgment calls. It goes back to, the game in New York. But, you still got to get that run in. It was only one out. So
right. Hey, by the way, Ned Colletti will be joining us any moment. He'll be here. So as promised, Ned Colletti will be joining us very, very shortly. And we'll bring him in. But this Giants team, just to give you a breakdown of the game, Giants only score 2 runs in the 7th. And I always say this, guys get sent down and then they come back and they get hot. Now watch Fitzgerald get hot, and then there'll be a Schmidt-Fitzgerald controversy. Watch.
And what do you think happened? What do you think happened to Koss? Do you think him running the bases, he hurt something, or because he did have a pinch runner?
Most likely.
Why is he? Okay.
Most likely. So I don't know who's next. My guess is it's Wade Meckler. He's on the 40. The Giants are going to need a body tomorrow night.
Yeah, I was surprised they even bought Fitzgerald up, considering, you remember they said the other day he got hit by a glass.
Yeah.
And
James A is saying an oblique. Are we getting reports of an oblique? If that's the case, Koss. You probably won't see Christian Koss back up here for months if he makes it back up. So an oblique is not something you want to. Those are tough. He probably overswung. He gave it a ride, but all right. So I see Ned in the green room. We're going to bring in Ned Colletti to the show, and welcome on in, Ned. How are you?
Hey, good to see you guys. Doing good.
Yeah, good to see you.
What do you say there, Mr. Salty?
I've just been speaking my mind. First of all, I want to say congratulations on a great draft with the Sharks. Got me really excited. And you know what's funny is NHL, ESPN, and they were all talking about the great pick. I thought it was spectacular for number 2. I also like the goalie you got. I'm just super excited. And I know since you've been on the show, the Sharks have sort of been down. But as you said, just be patient. And, some great moves, getting rid of the contracts, the buyouts. And I love it when they say, 2028, 29, the Sharks are going to be back. I'm excited for next year. So job well done.
Well, our amateur guys led by Chris Morehouse do a phenomenal job. The draft in hockey is worldwide. So you're not just in the United States or maybe going into Canada or things like that. But I mean, you are all over Europe as well. So they do great work. And Mike,
I thought this was the most unique draft I've seen in a long time. The way it was presented, it was in a small setting, but they had that sort of 4D thing where, after he got drafted, you saw Mike Greer and all the guys in the back. I thought it was probably one of the best drafts that I've seen. Very good. And just congratulations on your end.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, and as we bring it back to some baseball here, we'll get into some hockey later on. Maybe we'll do a little discussion on how everything went down. But Giants in a free for all right now. They have lost 6 of 7. Cannot score runs. Tonight was game 85. And it's the 41st game of the season with scoring 3 runs or less. So they are at 48% of their games. They are scoring 3 runs or less. That makes it a pressure on a guy like Logan Webb, who went out and pitched another stellar game tonight, but can't afford to make a mistake. He gave up 3 straight hits in the 7th, just singles for the 3rd run, and that was it,
Yeah, I mean their pitching has been good, but their offense, it's been a struggle. When you have 3 runs to work with, tough to do in this day and age, almost impossible. Your best pitchers look at the best in the game, and they need more than 3 runs most of the time.
Yeah, and of course, it was 2 weeks ago yesterday on Father's Day that the Giants, while in LA, made a big splash and were the story of baseball for 48 to 72 hours in trading for Rafael Devers. Devers in his last 15 at bats, according to Darren here, is 0 for 15 with 12 strikeouts, 4 Ks tonight, the Golden Sombrero. What do you make of something like that, Ned? Is that a guy that's just pressing too hard, trying to do too much, or
he's a 275 hitter. Almost every year he's right around that number. And he's hit over 300 in the postseason in 3 or 4 different years. So, that somebody goes 12 for 15 with 12 strikeouts. Yeah, that's not a good thing, but a season's not 15 at bats.
Right.
I think this was one of the most important trades for the Giants in a long, long time. And it'll be fine. He's going to be a very good player, and he's going to help the players on both sides of him in the lineup and maybe up and down the lineup. But you're going to have to be patient with him. People try to do their best. Sometimes they try too hard.
Yeah. I don't worry about him. He's this proven, established veteran.
He is who he is.
He's going to hit, and I don't worry one bit about him. He's a guy is capable of going. He's 0 for 15 with 12 strikeouts. He's capable of going 12 for 15. With 4 homers. I mean, that's the kind of hitter this guy is. So, a lot of people in the chat get upset with guys that have a bad day or two or a series, and they just want to, they say that awful. I had to deal with people from because I was promoting Casey Schmidt for the last 2 years. I said the guy just needs regular playing time. Give him regular playing time, and you watch. And people say he's horrible. you couldn't hit in 23 when he came up. And I said, yeah, you guys would have all gotten rid of Matt Williams too after 3 years, and just you need consistent at bats. The guy takes time to develop. Now, he's hurt again. He just went on the IL today, but he was the Giants' hottest hitter before he went out. He was hitting 286 and leading the team in batting. And then, so it happens. We understand that, but when a team is going through a spell like this, where, it's not just a week or two, it's, I just mentioned 41 times out of 85 games at 48% of the time. I mean, at what point, Ned, is it just a slump, or at what point is it that's just who they are?
It's getting to be that's who they are. It moves very, in my mind, it moves very slowly, but that's kind of the direction it's moving in. You know who the good hitters are, and you know who the hitters are that struggle. I don't think there's much surprise, and as you look at the lineup every night. I think, again, the trade, I think, was huge. I think the team has played hard. They're over 500. Nobody was going to catch the Dodgers this year. The time to do it was 10 days to 40 days ago, when the Dodgers had their toughest schedule and they had an entire pitching staff basically on the IL. That was the time to do it. And as they started to hit in the Colorado, and then now the White Sox, with Kansas City in the middle, where they took 2 out of 3 on the road, they had about a 3 or 4 game lead after that 30-game stretch. That was the time to do it. So let's be serious. Ain't nobody going to catch them maybe for a while, not just this year. So you've got to get yourself in the wild card. You've got to get yourself in this division, tough division. And they've played hard. They are limited. And when teams are when teams are growing and they're rebuilding, and we're gonna see the same thing in San Jose, you're gonna see really good stretches, and then you're gonna see a stretch where a guy takes a breath, another guy takes a breath. The next thing you know, you've got one of your best hitters striking out 12 out of 15 times. You're scoring 3 runs a night on a good night, and that's what you're gonna see. You've got to build to the point where your consistency at a high level starts to dominate, where that's more what you see, 4.5 runs a night, 4 a night, and then the 2 or 3 is the outlier. The 5 or 6 run night is right now the outlier. Right. You got to reverse that. And when it reverses, then you're going to start to see the team win 2 out of 3 many series.
Yeah. And they've done, the Giants started off the season 8-1, and they had a fantastic spring. And he said, well, spring doesn't matter, but maybe for a team that hasn't done well for a few years, it does matter. And they come out of the gate, they play great, 8-1. They continue what they were doing in spring, which was situational hitting, sacrifice flies with runner on third, less than 2 out. Moving the runner along, hitting to the right side, moving the runners up, stealing bases, fundamental defense. And then somewhere along the line, a month, I don't know if this is true. This is what I perceive, Ned, and I've said this. I may be wrong, but I have always said that when things get tough, guys revert. It's kind of like muscle memory. They forget what they did in spring, all the different changes they were working on, and they go back to their regular who they are. Is that pretty accurate?
That's right on. And until they figure out that, hey, they can't continue to go back to where they were. It's like different coaches that I've run into and managers through the years that say, well, this is how I've always done it. Well, yeah, and you've been fired 4 or 5 times. Yeah. How about doing something different? And so what you're saying is true. There's a lot of guys that can hit at 515, and they can come out early and hit in the cage and really start to refine their swing. How do they do it in real time? And the best do it in real time. but it takes time, especially for your young hitters. It takes time for them to start to do it in real time.
Well, now you're talking about this. This has always fascinated me because you mentioned at 5:15. I've always wondered, guys go out there at batting practice. They practice going the other way. They practice doing certain things, but they're facing a 70-mile-an-hour pitch. How does that work when all of a sudden you're seeing 96?
With new value at McDonald's, you'll get more than you expect.
Danny.
Yeah, we got you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, there you are. Okay.
Okay.
That's just the way the game is. And it's really not, it's not so much velocity. You don't see very many guys that can't catch up to velocity. Once in a while, you'll see a guy that just can blow everybody away. But by and large, it's change of speed, change of location. So, you're not going to find a guy throwing 95 miles an hour to throw BP to you. Not with command. If he had command, he'd be pitching at 9 o'clock.
Right.
So, it's just the way it goes. So, hitting is tough. Hitting is maybe the toughest thing to do in sport.
I don't know how guys do it. Yeah, I mean, the best guys, best hitters in the history of the game, that fail 70% of the time are in the Hall of Fame. So
I bet you Barry went 0 for 15 at some point in time.
I'm sure he did. Yeah. I mean,
Tony Gwynn probably went 0 for 15. Maybe a little less likely, but probably went 0 for 15.
Yeah. Probably not with 12 Ks, Tony, but
no, I don't think Barry either with 12 Ks.
Yeah. But so this club now, were the Dodgers off tonight? I think, they were off. So the Giants are now 8 back of the Dodgers, fall a half game further back. To think that 2 weeks ago they were 2 out after losing Sunday and they could have tied them.
Quick.
Yeah, it went quick. It went quick. And, it not to be unexpected, though, because I've been saying all year long, the Dodgers are going to win this game by division by double digits when it's all said and done. The Dodgers were not playing well. And I said, but this is what they've done kind of the last couple of years. They just kind of first half, they just, they get into it, they play, they go through a little streak. And then all of a sudden it's like, okay, guys are coming closer. San Diego thinks they can beat us. All right, let's tune it up. Boom. Beat San Diego, 5 out of 6 or something like that. Yeah. 5 out of 7.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And then the Giants come to town.
Been right since either.
Yeah.
They haven't been very good.
Correct. So, it's definitely the Dodgers division. We've all kind of known that the Giants, if they had a shot, they were going to, and you know what? There's still 75 plus games to go. I don't know. What are they?
Is that good news or bad news?
Yeah. I mean, for the Giants, I think it's going to remain a toss-up. I mean, this team has gone out, made some moves, a bold move by Buster. I mean, and, if it doesn't work out this year, it still doesn't mean it was a bad move. I think it's an excellent move because the Giants have not been able to land a star hitter in the free agent market. And they owe Rafi after this year 8 years, $250. If Rafi was a free agent after this year, he'd command 10,400 in that range. So you got a bargain in a way, and you got him for the next 8 years. Now you have a chance of doing what you've talked about a lot, is make it a destination place. If the Giants can somehow start hitting again, performing, Rafi has success at Oracle, and the Giants somehow get into the playoffs or just miss the playoffs, but the vibe is good, who knows what they could do in the offseason.
That's why I think this was one of the biggest trades they've made in a long time.
Yeah.
It tells the fan base certainly that, look, the ownership is committed. I've always known it, that this kind of, proves it a little bit. You've got that aspect. And as you say, it's been tough getting free agents. Not sure if they were ever close to signing Aaron Judge. We know how the Korea thing turned out. The Shohei thing, then really had no chance with that one. and on and on. I'm sure there's more that we don't even know about that they got involved in. So this changes the dynamic. And I think it starts to make San Francisco a destination, as you said. They got Adames last offseason. You talk about struggling. Someone's upset that he struck out 12 out of 15 times. How about hitting? What's he hitting? 205, 210, 212, somewhere in there?
Yeah, Willie is hitting. Let's see, what is Willie hitting here? I think pull that up. And it's been in the low 200s for most of the year, even below 200. But Willie right now is hitting 210. Yep, 210.
You want to start someplace, start there.
Yeah.
It changes the entire dynamic of the lineup, a lot of it at least. But I think that this trade really is it's exciting for the franchise. And he is a very, very good player. First baseman for a while, probably be a DH by the time you get halfway through it. But again, you need to reestablish what you had there from the late 90s until really 215, 216.
Yeah.
Forget the 100 and some win season. Yeah, okay, that it's in the books, but it looks more and more like an outlier as time goes on.
Now, Willie Adames is struggling, and Rafi, he struggled at the beginning of the season with Boston, and then he got it going, and he was back to being Rafi. Can a player who's used to playing the field, like he's been a third baseman his whole career, who now becomes a DH, can that throw a guy's game off where, they're just sitting there, waiting for their turn to come up every second, third inning?
Yeah, it might, but I think it'd be a lot tougher if he was a DH and the third baseman got hurt and it said, okay, you played this back in college, go play third base in the big leagues. I think the hitting would really suffer at that point in time. So much more to think about. It's refined thought process. And it's an adjustment. I'm not saying it's not an adjustment.
Yeah.
But it's not as big an adjustment as going the other way. And even as time goes on and you do adjust to it, you concentrate on 4 or 5 at bats and hopefully running the bases and you can refine the science of hitting, the art of hitting even more if that's all you're thinking about. Take a little time, sure, but I think it's less of a factor than the other way around.
Okay. Well, good. I want to have Lou, Lou, you got some different questions or thoughts on for Ned?
Yeah. With Ned, I think this is the biggest trade they made probably since I would say 1987 when the Giants traded Chris Brown, Mark Davis, Mark Grant 4 for 3. Where we acquired Dave Dravecky, Lefferts, and Kevin Mitchell. At the time, we didn't know how great some of these players were. But last weekend, when the trade happened, it was the first regular season game, non-Dodger game, where the vibe was back.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one thing about Devers, the one thing about Devers you got to remember, and this is what I think about him, is he started off this season with all the distractions. He started 0-19. First, I don't know if you knew that to start the year. 0 for 19. Everyone's against him. Now he goes to a new team. Sort of the same thing now. You're trying to get the vibe and everything. Mm-hmm. Now he's struggling. But coming back from 0-19, it takes a while in baseball. When we acquired him, he was batting 275. So that means he was batting on a 300 pace. Great hitters just need to adapt. But the other thing I've been seeing with the Giants, since they're not hitting, really no one's there to protect him. So all these pitchers are pitching him one way. I don't know if tonight, they were all high strikes. And I think he's almost doing too much because he sort of feels nobody else is doing anything. I got to hit a 3-run homer when I'm up by myself. I don't know.
Very true. That happens. It happens all the time.
I just think the adaptation going, and I think a little bit going from the American League to a National League. I think sometimes, even though there's interleague, it's still a little bit different, and different managers. So I still think it's going to be a great trade. I'm glad we have him for 8 years. I think in a month from now, we're going to say, oh my God, do you remember he was struggling? And he's going to, he's going to be our best hitter. He's the best contact hitter. And he sort of makes me, when he's at bat, I want to watch it. Where a lot of these other Giants, he's not like Ohtani, but at least he's our Ohtani. You know what I mean? Where I want to watch him, and I love it that he sprays the ball all over the place. My question to you is, what do the Giants do? Because the biggest problem in this losing streak is we're 19 for 111 with runners in scoring position. That's a major problem. So that means the whole team isn't doing the little things. Buster already made a big move. We have the trade deadline basically in a month. What can we do? Because I think too many times people say, oh, we're losing to these bad teams. As I say, you have to show up every game. It's MLB, it's the major leagues, especially when you're on the road. But what can they do to try to turn this around? Because I think too much blame goes to the manager, maybe the hitting coach, not enough maybe to the players. They go at 5 o'clock, they try to hit, but this has become now sort of like 2 months where they're just not hitting, with runners in scoring position. What can a team do overall? Because we only see it as fans, and we want, hey, they're getting paid this much, we want them to come through. But right now, 19 for 111, nobody's going to win with runners in scoring position doing that.
No, but I think good hitting brings about good hitting. Good clutch hitting brings about good clutch hitting. It's a matter of getting going. I mean, let me ask you, did you think that when they signed Adames, he'd be hitting 210 right now? In the second half, more than halfway through a season?
Well, I do know.
Back could be hitting, what's he hitting, 230, 240?
Yeah, I didn't know that he wasn't going to have as good a year as last year because it was his contract year, his free agent year. He had a great year. He comes from Milwaukee. That's just very good. But if you look at one thing, is he batted 217 2 years ago. So it's no surprise. And last year, Dan brought up a great point that he had, I think, 5 3-run homers, a grand slam.
No, he had 13 3-run homers.
3-run homers.
He had 8 2-run homers. Yeah, he only.
And it might have just been one of those magical years, his free agent year. And it's, no, I didn't think he'd be this bad.
This was probably an overpay.
But we have to. The Giants have to because we're not really getting anybody.
Well,
so, you can't blame them. We didn't have a shortstop.
Yeah. I kind of predicted that his year would be around 240s and that he would hit 23, 24 homers and drive in about 85 to 90 runs. Because last year he was 32 homers, 113 RBI or something like that. And I was like, there's no way he's going to produce that this year because he did. He had one of those years, magical years, where he hit, of his 32 homers, only 8 or 9 of them were solo.
Okay, so what numbers did you just say as far as home runs and RBIs?
About 23, 24, and 85.
Okay. And what do you think Lee should do?
Lee, I predicted he'd hit about 285.
Okay.
I didn't expect a lot of runs driving him to drive in, but
okay. One guy that's been, I think, terrific is Ramos throughout.
Yeah.
And really for more than just the first half of the season. So, we're talking about 3 really special hitters: Devers, Lee, Adames, Chapman. If they do what Danny predicts, if Danny's expectation, which isn't out of line, which is really kind of what most people who pay attention would probably say. So right on. I think you're 19 for 110. Is that what it was?
Yeah,
19 for 111 with the runners scoring position.
I think that changes. I don't think we're even talking about it. If people play to their expectation. And I think Danny's expectations are solid. if that's what the pace was, and that's what we were seeing, I don't think we'd be talking about the runners in scoring position issue. I think it'd be different. We wouldn't be talking about the 3 runs in half the games.
Right.
It'd be a totally different dynamic. So the best guys have got to be your best guys. We say it all the time in any sport. Your best players have to be your best players. Ramos is one of the best players. Ramos has been one of the best players.
Yeah.
Evers will be one of the best players, hitting 260-ish right now. And you're talking about a guy that has got two stretches of time where he's 0 for 34.
Yeah.
What would he be hitting if he wasn't 0 for, didn't have the full stretch and this stretch?
Right. Evers 261. Yeah. Ramos hitting 275. Yeah.
So, the toughest thing we do in baseball, whether it's you guys, me, or 40,000 at the ballpark, is be patient. Toughest thing to do because it happens almost every day. But that's really a key part to the game. And knowing when you make a move and when you don't make a move. You're going to have Adames for a while. This is not his walk year.
No.
Right.
So we're going to have to be patient with it and figure out how he can feel the success and get back to being successful. And, it's sadly common where somebody who has really played hard for a long time finally gets paid a generational salary. Not that he wasn't making good money before, but, really massive. That you see that you get what you expect. Somebody in analytics ought to do that study.
Oh yeah.
And anybody that signed for, pick a number, 10 million a year to 35, 40 million a year. Take a look at that story. How many players got better? How many players signed a contract and got better? Barry Bonds, a million years ago. But how many signed a big contract and actually got better? Shohei Ohtani.
I was going to say Shohei, yeah.
But I mean, if we
Aaron Judge,
yeah, we come up with a list. But it's not like they're all like I've got 500 guys I'll tell you about. No, you've got as many guys that have gone the other way as have done what
right.
you expect.
That's very true. I got a question for you I want to ask you, but first let me go to this question from Justin Sutterfield, $10. He says, question for Ned. Do you think the Dodgers should go after a front of the rotation arm or an outfielder, I'm assuming, at the deadline? Maybe a rental, because I have to believe they are all in on Kyle Tucker next year.
Well, Kyle Tucker's a great player. Kyle Tucker's probably 500 large. Okay. The Dodgers ownership is, I've never seen an owner, and I love the Giants group. I've never seen an ownership that is as hungry for victory as they are. And do they worry about what they spend? Maybe a little bit, but they worry about winning and losing more than they worry about what they're spending, I think. It's hard to say if they should go after a front of the rotation arm or an outfielder at the deadline. That's a tough question. And I want to get to Kyle Tucker and Bregman here in a minute, another topic. But, they've got Tyler Glasnow had another setback. They haven't gotten really anywhere near what they thought. You talk about an Adames situation. That's almost an Adames on the mound. Blake Snell hasn't pitched much. So their rotation there could be somebody at the top of that rotation that's sitting in the training room right now. So
I think Emmett Sheehan's going to be a good pitcher for them. He's hot right now.
And so, where are you going to find a top of the rotation starter? And I think that your decision on that piece of it, and there's a lot of questions in Justin's message there, is realistically, when is Glasnow coming back? Realistically, when is Blake Snell coming back? And because you have time to play with. Your lead is not going to get any shorter than probably 5 games at the worst. And another week might be 10 and 12. So you don't have to worry about that. You can slow play some guys and let them get going. The outfield situation, Teoscar's been great. The center fielder Page has really been good.
Yeah,
all-star season out of him. Really take a big stride. Now I'm jumping all over the place here, but I want to make this because we've talked about this. That's an example of a young player who struggled with the pace, struggled with a lot of different things, offensively and defensively, and went to work off season and fine-tuned his game. And now he's changed that entire lineup because he sits in the top of the second half of it, and he's dangerous, and he plays in the middle of the field. That's remarkable. But you've got to have players that do that as well as those free agents that need to live up to the expectation. Key thing. But then the question about the outfield, you got Edman, really good player. Tio's been phenomenal. And, you've got enough outfielders there. I don't know that they go and do anything major if they believe that the rotation will come back healthy and maybe one of their relief pitchers. I think they kind of go with what they got. And as far as next year with Kyle Tucker, I heard this the other day, and I can't remember where I heard it, but Bregman and Kyle Tucker, supposedly really good friends. And the idea was, okay, Kyle Tucker's not going to sign. He's going to be in his walk year, 1 year with the Cubs, and then he'll figure it out. Bregman's got a 3-year deal, but he has an out after the first year, after the second year. So next winter, they will be free agents together. And the idea is that they want to be teammates.
Well, they were teammates in Houston, right? Yeah.
Yes. So, that may be in the works as well.
Package deal. Interesting. Now,
it's expensive. Don't get me wrong. Don't be extra expensive.
Now, I would have said 3 months ago, probably said it in the offseason, Muncy's a free agent. This guy's done. They're definitely going to get a third baseman, but all of a sudden he gets his astigmatism fixed, and he's like a new guy.
100 RBI pace.
Jeez.
Have you ever heard of that before, Ned? Where a guy's struggling who has it, and now with these glasses and fixes it? I mean, the guy's a beast.
Well, to a lesser extent, Kike Hernandez did it last year for the Dodgers too.
Wow.
It's a simple thing in a way, but a lot of athletes don't want to think there's anything that's
wrong,
fallible, that they're fallible in any way. But it's been remarkable the change in him. I mean, he's gone from somebody when they released Chris Taylor and Austin
next
Barnes,
in line, maybe
he was the next guy in line.
Yeah.
Well, he's the next guy in line now. They don't have a next guy in line. He might be the next guy in line for an extension. We know how he hits in the postseason too. He's a monster.
Now, if I'm the Dodgers, I know Mookie's had a little bit of a off year for him. He started off losing 20 pounds in the preseason.
Yep.
And what I hear now, he's still about 8 to 10 pounds below where he's normally at. Then he's got a whole new position, which is shortstop this year. I think the Dodgers eventually bring in Edman to short and move Mookie back to right. They're not getting production out of Conforto. They moved Teoscar over back to left. They got Pages manning center. That affords them to move Edman if they want to put him at short. They can play around with second. I guess they got Kim and they've got, other options. But I wouldn't be surprised to see in the second half at some point, whether it's August, September, Mookie gets back into his groove in right field, and all of a sudden it's like off to the races.
Yep.
That's what I can kind of envision it.
Anything is possible, and that's certainly possible. So now let's focus in on what you just said and the Dodgers. And I know this is really the NorCal Sports Network, and it's more Giants than Dodgers.
Yeah, Flash is not happy. He says, "Why are we still talking about LA?" We'll get back to the Giants here, I promise.
Yeah, well, we got time, Flash. But I'm just trying. I'm trying to give you the game plan for the Giants. You talk about Edmonds. You talk about this guy would be a really good shortstop. He's not even playing shortstop. You got a guy that's been an MVP playing shortstop that you're going to move to right field. And you're doing this, Danny, because it's going to make your team better.
Right.
And your team is still up by 8 games. And your team has played with a pitching staff on the IL, a whole staff basically. So, where's another team like that? Sorry, Flash, but where's another team like that?
Yeah. The Dodgers to me are dress rehearsal. It's just dress rehearsal to the playoffs, Ned. That's all they're doing.
So, you got to build your team now. If you're in the NL West, or really almost any team in the National League, you got to build your team with October in mind, get there, and be able to win a 3 out of 5, 4 out of 7.
Yeah.
Well, Flash, I do root for the Giants too, so I don't think I'm just a Dodger guy. I had a great time.
He's chuckling now. He's laughing. Yeah, he's laughing.
Hey, Dan, I just have one question for Ned.
Yeah.
Is anything going to change with the Dodgers with the purchase of the Lakers?
No, okay. I don't think so.
So now NorCal, we're really going to have to worry.
The Lakers will be even better.
Better. That's what I was worried about. Okay.
Oh yeah.
I figured, it's only $10 billion. The money's never going to dry. I got it.
One of the great people I've met in my career is Peter Guber.
Oh yeah.
One of the owners of the Dodgers.
He's with the Warriors.
And the Warriors. So now you're going to have a Dodger ownership meeting, and you're going to have one of the owners of the primary owner of the Lakers, and I don't know how they split up the ownership of the Warriors, but
Peter, you're gonna have to leave the room. We're talking basketball.
Yeah, you got two. You're gonna have 2 guys that are gonna be competing against each other that have done great work together. It's so ironic. I don't think anybody's ever talked about that. But you got the big rivalry, and the West Coast rivalry. It's not the Celtics and the Lakers, but you got a pretty good rivalry between Golden State and LA, and 2 of the main people on the ownership side of both of them are involved with another team completely different.
Right.
Lakers have been great. They're iconic, but I think their entire system is going to get a reboot.
Great.
Big time.
Well, I'm looking here at I want to get to Jung Hoo Lee. I'm looking at his StatCast right here, and he was hitting, well, you can't really count the first couple weeks. It's just the averages are all over the place. But let's say after 30 games, he was hitting 316. And as I look at his set, 316, 314, 312, 305, 303, bounced up to 312, but then 301, 293, 287, 285, 282, 276, back up to 282, down to 285, 281, 277. We jump into game 59, 277. It just keeps going down. He's now at 243.
Danny, you have any stocks like this?
Yeah, I've had a few. My question is, he has no options. He's came over, signed from Korea. You can't send him down unless you do something like the Rangers did with Jake Berger, and he agrees to go down, work on some things for a couple of weeks, and come right back up. At this point, as a organization, do you let this guy who's just floundering, and you can see it at the plate, he's not even making that hard a contact a lot. I suggest today on Twitter that you get his permission and you say, hey, look, We're going to send you down to get yourself back on track, get your confidence back, get your swing back. 2 weeks, go down and come back up. In the meantime, the Giants, I think they need to play Luis Matos because they don't know what this guy has. They did this to Ramos. They did it to Schmidt. They did it to Bart. And they don't let these guys play. And then they come up and play and they all find out, wow, these guys are pretty good. Well, how is Bozo the Clown here can see that these guys, I go watch him in spring training. I watch them in the minors. I go, these guys got tools. I think they can hit. Why don't they give them a shot? They get their shots and they become the Giants' best hitters. Matos is a hitter, but they don't give him a chance. He comes up, he plays sparingly, he gets 6 at-bats during the week. He goes 0 for 6. They sit him some more. They finally send him down. He's tearing it up in AAA now. Why not give the guy – you got the trade deadline coming up. Why not give him 25 games? My thinking is, can he be any worse production-wise to hurt the team what Jung Hoo Lee's done in the last month and a half? I don't think so. So give him a shot. 2 things can happen, or 3 things. 1, he falters and he's no good, and you figure it out. You go, okay, he's not part of our future, it looks like. Number 2, he looks pretty doggone good. We found ourselves a player. Yaz is a free agent. Now we got a guy, right hand. Or number 3, he becomes tradable. But the worst thing, in my opinion, is letting the guy just rot in AAA when you got a guy who's struggling. And if you don't want to send Lee down, play Matos daily and rotate Yaz and Lee. Let them rotate. Let the kid play and see what you got. I don't know. Maybe I got rocks in my head and I'm dumb, but that's just what I think. I think guys that are young and you're high on, and he won Player of the Week a year ago with 18 RBIs in a week. He tore up the week, and then he had a bad 10-day stretch after that, and they sent him down, never to be heard of again. And I don't know what this organization is thinking, but what my philosophy is, play the young kid, and at least you know what you got going forward, if anything. What do you say to something like that? Is that something that clubs look at? And I mean, it just frustrates me. It really does.
Well, the one thing I know is I don't know all the personalities or all the dynamics. And if you take away the opportunity from a young player, how are they going to? If you take it away, like you take it away, or you tell them you got to go down for a while. How's that go? How does that go? So, maybe he's been hurt. Maybe he's battling injury. Maybe you can put him on the IL for a little while. Let him take a breath. Maybe do a rehab assignment. A little less pride. No pride at stake in that.
Right.
And maybe then you give Matos a chance. See, to really answer your question, I'd have to go way below the surface on the personalities of everybody involved. And why they think what they think, not just the players, but why does the leadership in baseball think what they think about the players? They're around them every day. We love to talk about it. Us 3 guys, you 2 guys when I'm not here. It's one of the great parts of spring and summer and fall. It's baseball conversation. But I'm smart enough to know I'm not smart enough because I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just and I understand.
They're not robots. They're not.
Yeah.
They're not. They're human beings.
And I understand the Giants' philosophy in some ways. They like to play the veterans. They re-signed Yaz to a $9.25 million deal in the off season. Matos has options, so you can play with that. But when Matos clearly won the job, was outplayed. He was probably their best hitter in the spring, beside him and Chapman. And so Matos had a really good spring, but then you start off the year with this platoon stuff. And we all know that he's batting from the wrong side of the plate if he's going to be playing on the platoon, because right-handed pitching makes up 75% of the league.
Right.
And so the lefty is going to get more, Yaz is going to get more playing time, which to me, if a guy can hit, he can hit. This was what they did with Ramos. They platooned him. They'd bring him up in the 22 season. And I remember the first weekend of the season, they were facing the Marlins and they had two lefties going. So they brought Ramos up and the Bay Area got all excited thinking that Ramos' era is finally arrived, and he got sent down after the series. They just wanted a platoon advantage. And so if you carry that philosophy, then you're really never going to find out if a guy is good enough to hit.
That was a different leadership group, though, too.
Yep, it was. It was. So this year I thought, oh, well, Ramos or Matos is going to get to play.
Let me ask you both the question.
Yeah.
Mr. Salty.
I'm here.
You have faith in Buster Posey?
I think he's made.
That's a yes or a no question.
Too early. I have faith in him for us to be better, or a playoff team, or to, because I think the last 4 years not as where he's at right now. He's got to prove a little bit more. He made one trade. I didn't like the Chapman signing, 6 years, no trade, where he basically stepped in to make sure the signing was. I don't like the Verlander pickup, because I think sometimes the Giants sort of panic and then he picked Adames and he hasn't proven. So really of his 4 things, so again, I still think it's too early, but you're asking me, do I have faith in him? It's hard when a guy's never done the job. I know he was a great baseball player, but a lot of great baseball players don't make great, president of operations.
Right.
I have faith in Buster, and he's a will to win, to win. And that to me means a lot, because I think he's not going to rest easy. And so the fact that he was a winner, at Florida State, he was a champion and MVP and Rookie of the Year and Comeback Player of the Year, tells me that something's in his character that's not going to accept mediocrity. So that I have faith in him.
Yep. Well, I have faith in him too. And I think it's rare to lose point. It's rare to have somebody who hasn't done a job before, who's battling in a division against one of the great teams in the last 25, 30 years, if not maybe in history, with a team that is not really all his team.
True.
And expect them to turn it on a dime. I think, you have to look at, is the team playing better than you thought? Do the majority of the players play up to expectation? Do they play hard? Does Bob Melvin and staff, do they fine-tune guys to think about what they're doing and they get better at what they do? Those are the questions. And I think the team, I don't know if anybody thought when the season began that, I know it's changed in the last couple of weeks, but as you got to the middle of June, a team be 2 or 3 games out. I don't think anybody thought that was going to happen. I don't think anybody thought that you'd have Devers on your team. I don't think you thought that on Memorial Day, let alone middle of June. So, this is what happens as teams take steps to get better. And they have competition to get them better. Where your 27th player becomes better than your 26th. Whether your 12 person on the pitching staff becomes better as you fine tune it. And I would say that you've got some high price guys that have not lived up to expectation. We've talked about them. But I think by and large, the culture is changing.
Yeah.
You said it. I think you said it a little while ago, Lou, that I think it was you, one of you two, but the weekend after the Devers deal, the ballpark was alive.
Agreed.
I saw it was like, whoa, hey, this is wild. This is back. So, it's teams that struggle like they have struggled. It's almost like if you went back to the pioneer days, okay? And you had a big wagon train trying to get through the mud. And you got the horses trying to pull the big wheel out of the mud. And it turns, but it turns slow. But it turns until you get enough traction and you get it going and you can get it out. But that's where they're at. And, it's to sustain how they started would be tough. And that's another thing about the Devers deal. When they take on the contract and they quietly, nobody knew this thing was happening. I think everybody was shocked. Boston media is one of the great media centers in the world in sports. Shocked. Nobody had any idea.
Right.
And when he walked in that room, the other 25 players went, okay, which I think they needed to do. Not just for the destination piece, which we've talked about on your show a handful of times, certainly a key piece, but also to show that team, that Buster Posey and Zach and the staff showed the players they've been paying attention to their effort, to how hard they've been playing. Because I'm getting long-winded here and I apologize, but I think whenever you have anybody in any walk of life that exceeds and most of these guys have exceeded expectation to some degree, not some of the big name guys, but some of the other guys. When you do that, and it's above your talent grade or above if it's an academic endeavor and it's above your thought process, at some point in time in period of a year or a baseball season, people get tired.
Right.
They get mentally tired and they take a breath, and the people they're competing against aren't mentally tired and they're not taking a breath. And that's why you see a 2-game deficit turn into an 8-game deficit in 10, 12 days. So I think there's so many good signs for this organization, so many things that have taken a step. Are they going to take a giant step and take, no pun intended, and be 5 games ahead of the Dodgers today? No, impossible. But are they better than they were? I don't think anybody in your audience, Danny, can't with all honesty say they are better than they were a year ago, and they're better than they were 2 years ago, and that they're going to continue to get better as time goes on. Massive steps? Maybe not. Incrementally, that's how it goes. But I think they're going. Sorry for the.
No, that's great, because that leads into my next question, because you kind of answered a bit of it just incrementally, step by step. But I was thinking about this and I thought, well, gosh, you kind of experienced this, because my question was going to be, excluding the Dodgers, how do you take over a team and turn it around and get it to turn around? But you kind of took over a Dodger team that was financially strapped in 2000 after the 2005 season. You entered the 2006 season. The 2005 Dodgers were 71-91, and they finished fourth place.
Thank you. That's the team I inherited, 71 and 91.
You inherited,
and they started 12-2, so that the last 148 games, they were 30 games under 500.
Oh yeah, they would have been 79 and
but how did I do it? And I didn't have I had hardly any payroll. And I had about 7 or 8 players that never played another game after that season. I had to clear them out. And what I did is I went and I signed people who I knew or had seen their track record on short-term deals who were winning players. Billy Miller, the great Giant, Cub, Red Sox, Dodger at the end. Nomar Garcia-Parra, LA born, great right-handed hitter. Brought him in, 1-year deal. Ended up signing him for longer than that, but at the beginning, 1-year deal. A guy that we added in 2002 to help us get to the World Series, Kenny Lofton. Brought him in. Okay. Rafael Furcal. Brought him in. You know, and his was I think a 3-year deal. So I found players that my approach was, I'd rather overpay you for a short-term deal and let's see how it goes.
Wow.
And that's what we did. And we went from 7, the team I started with, they'd won 71 before I got there. We won 88. We turned it like that. With the payroll, really not much different.
Yeah, you won 88, then the next year, 82, then 84, 95, 80, then 82, 86, 92. Yeah. Wow, you just kept going. Now, well, that's interesting because I didn't even think about that and didn't realize that was your philosophy when you first took over, short-term deals with players that you knew well. Now, that makes me wonder, with the Giants' philosophy, they're kind of, what's the terminology I can use here? They can, like a stock, they can soar and hit the jackpot, or they can sink potentially because they've got Adames for 6 more years, Chapman for 5, Devers for 8, Jung Hoo Lee's long-term. Well, he's got an opt-out after the 4th year, but so he's got 2 more years. But they've tied themselves into 4 or 5 players for quite a while. If these guys start playing well, it looks pretty good. But if Adames and Lee, for example, and Chapman, let's say, if those guys don't perform well, what happens then? Are you just kind of stuck, right? I mean, you
don't even want to think about that.
Woo.
You can think about that, but they don't want to have to think about that. Well, the way I looked at it back in the winter of 05 and 06, and I had waited 25 years to get to that seat. I paid my dues, so to speak.
Right.
Worked every department in the baseball side of an organization for years, and loved my time in the Bay Area with Sabes and Peter McGowan and Larry Bear and our crew, Jeremy Shelley, Dick Tidrow, gosh, Mr. Tidrow, great one. But I knew Billy Miller, and I called him and I says, "Look, I need you. I need who you are as much as the player. I need how you approach the game." He played every game like it was his last. He said, "You got it." Okay. Kenny Lofton, I told him the same thing. I had been around these guys. And I said, "Kenny, how about coming to LA? You live in Santa Monica. How about coming to LA? Short-term deal. Let's see where we go." Kenny Lofton, tough character. Yeah. Okay. Great basketball player at Arizona.
Bear down.
We got swept by the Mets in the first round. Made it to the playoffs, got swept by the Mets, and going through the locker room after the sweep, and get to Kenny, tapping him on the shoulder. He won't look up. Finally, he looks up. His face is full of tears. As tough as he is, he wanted to win so bad. Brought him in. Nomar Garcia-Parra, didn't know Nomar. I knew he was from LA. I brought him and his wife in, and we had a couple conversations. I told him what I wanted to do. I told him what I needed from him. And you know what else I got him to do? He's a shortstop. A-Rod, okay, shortstop. They had Jeter, shortstop. They had the 3 of the greatest shortstops in the history of the game. He was one of them. I said, "I got a shortstop. I just signed for Carl. I need you to play first base."
I remember that, first base, yeah.
Yeah, and he said, you know what he said? "Done." I guess some guys I knew, they knew me, they knew how I was going to go about it. And the other guys I just related to. For Carl, The story was the Cubs had offered him 55 for 5, 11 a year. I knew his agent, and I said, you have a young player as a free agent. He was probably 26, maybe 25. I said, prices keep going up. You're going to lock him into 11 times 5. What if I gave you 13 times 3? Give you 6 more over 3 years and let you become a free agent again 2 years sooner. He said, I kind of like that. I brought him to LA. I brought one of our great spokespeople out, and ambassadors, Manny Mota. Rafael saw Manny Mota, and the deal was done. I used every aspect I could, and we had no payroll, really.
Okay, so you're talking, what you're sharing here is very fascinating to me, because you're using salesmanship tools. Did you learn that as an assistant GM in Chicago and then with Brian in San Francisco, or was that innate in your character?
Well, I can't say that my personality was like that really until I got to San Francisco. And, my time in San Francisco was the most important time of my career. And Sabes and Bob Quinn, who hired us both, was a GM at the time, my first couple of years. And then Sabes took over in 97. I moved up to AGM in 97. It was the most instrumental time in my career because both of us grew. Sabes and I both grew huge in that period of time. Our staff was small. We had to figure out salesmanship. We had to figure out how we could convince somebody to come to San Francisco. Okay. If you look back at the 95 and 96 Giants, we lost a bunch of games. Not very good. That was Bob's last 2 years as a GM. That's what we inherited. So I kind of did this twice. Once as Sabes' right-hand guy, so to speak, and then once on my own with my staff, a different staff. But I did it twice. And I'm doing it, as a pro scout a little bit in San Jose now. To how do you build something that's kind of at the bottom? Because, you look at the Giants since 2000, they've had a magnificent ballpark to play in. You guys been around a while. Did you like going to Candlestick?
It was my Candlestick.
It was tough.
I enjoyed it, but that's because it was the only yard I knew growing up. But
it wasn't really the place that players wanted to come to play.
Right. Yeah.
I remember, I talked Darrell Hamilton, God bless him, passed away a few years ago, into coming to play for 1 year and play center field for us. And he did it. He was intrigued with playing with Barry. Yeah. And he was, and he kind of liked that idea. And after a couple days there, he said, I can't believe I said yes to coming out here. The weather was brutal. He was freezing. He bought a wetsuit, like what divers use.
Yeah.
He played with a wetsuit under his uniform.
Oh my!
But that's what we did. And I'm going to take exception to you talking about the 1987 deal with the Giants.
The trade.
Great trade, no doubt. I think the 97 trade with Matt Williams and Jeff Kent was even bigger.
Yeah, that was a huge trade. You know what's amazing about we were talking about that, Lou. Ned. We were talking about that trade right after the Devers trade, because we thought the Devers trade might have been the biggest star the Giants ever traded for, because Jeff Kent was not a star at the time. Yeah. He became a superstar.
Kevin Mitchell was a pretty good player too.
Yeah, but he still wasn't that star superstar.
You guys are right. I'll give you that. I'll give you that piece back.
Yeah, but Mitchell and Kent. Kent belongs in the Hall of Fame, in my opinion. Yes. I don't understand why he's not in the Hall of Fame. Just makes zero sense to me. But anyway, so that's very interesting, though, that you say that about these, minimum deals, getting guys to play. I think the perception has somewhat changed in San Francisco to defend Buster a little bit. Hard to get guys to come as hitters to that park. and he's probably had to overpay for Adames, a little bit for Chapman, and Farhan with Lee, and then Devers was a trade. I still love the trade because you got him for 8 years. Even if it doesn't work out, you can't determine what the next 8 years looks like when you make the deal. You're basing it off his track record, and it's a good signing in my opinion. A trade, it's as good as a free agent signing you're ever going to get, most likely. So I think you hit the nail on the head earlier on. You said the guys like Adames, Lee, and Chapman have to start performing up to their capabilities.
There's no doubt.
And
Devers
if not,
will. I don't know if the other guys will or not.
Yeah,
I'm gonna go back to. I'm gonna take exception because we're talking sports about what you said about they have a tough time getting players because of the ballpark. No place was tougher than Candlestick Park. No place.
Yeah.
Anybody who'd ever played there as a visiting player, talking to them, which we did, many of them, about coming, they were like, what? I'm from the East Coast. I'm going all the way out there. And we're going to play, Alcatraz 2.0. No way. No way. I mean, but they did. And, Oracle Field has been there since 2000. So this is year 26. Yeah. There's been a lot of great players who have played there. Some were drafted, didn't have a choice, so to speak. But right. I can't use the ballpark as an excuse for why they haven't been able to attract players. I find that to be weak. Because it's a beautiful ballpark.
Yeah, it is a beautiful park.
And it's a phenomenal environment. And for probably 20 of the 26 seasons, you couldn't find a seat. Okay. So it's a marquee franchise and in a marquee ballpark, maybe the greatest quote, and it's 26 years old, but you start with the Camden Yard era of ballparks and you work your way up from them where it wasn't the cookie cutter of Cincinnati or Pittsburgh or Philly or St. Louis, had a unique charm to it. I don't know that any of them are better than that one, than the one in San Francisco.
Yeah, it's a beautiful park. Yeah.
So I'm not buying that. You can't get hitters here because of the ballpark. What did it do? Did it really hurt Barry Bonds? Jeff Kent, did it really destroy his career? No. I think that's all BS.
Yeah. I think it's an excuse because I see visiting teams hit bombs left and right. I just think it's the players we got.
I ain't buying that. I just think it hasn't been a destination for people for whatever reason.
That's why I say this Devers deal is so huge.
I got to interrupt you. I'm sorry, it's your show, but I'm going to interrupt you anyway.
No worries. Go ahead.
While people say, well, the Giants will spend money. Okay, yeah, they've proven that. They've done great. But you know what you also have to do? You got to win. You got to win.
Yeah.
There's some people who will just come for the money. And 20 million, 30 million more is 20, 30 million more. But I don't think they'd care how tough the ballpark was to hit in or which way the wind's blowing or what the time. They wouldn't care anything if the team was winning 90 plus games a year and having a chance every year. That's the best marketing tool anybody could ever have. Win games. Play fundamentally sound so you win games. Be exciting so you win games. That trumps everything else. That exceeds everything else. That's 100%. What you got to have.
100%.
Without that, we're seeking excuses.
Yep. We got a couple of supers.
Because we don't want to say we're not good enough. Because we don't want to say we don't win enough games. The real reason is we don't win enough games. But you know what? Let's say it's a tough place to hit it. Okay?
Yeah. Let's
say that, it's too cold or the taxes are too high or any of these other excuses to use your word there, Lou. It's excuse.
Yeah.
Excuse.
Absolutely. Aaron.
The way I got, you got me going tonight, Danny. I haven't looked this up for a long, long time. Somebody told me that my last 9 years in San Francisco, the Giants finished ahead of the Dodgers 8 out of 9. I don't know if it's fact or fiction, with the one exception being when Finley hit the grand slam. So when our payroll was 50, the Dodgers were 80. Okay. Dodgers are signing Kevin Brown for $105 million and flying him back and forth to Macon, Georgia, a dozen times a year in a private jet. We're signing Michael Tucker and forfeiting a draft pick because we don't have the finances and we don't have the time to wait. And we're still beating this team. So I don't know if that's fact or fiction, and I really don't want to know. But I know that from 97 on, it was pretty good.
8 straight years of winning record, 97 through 04. If the format of today's playoffs were in play with 3 wild cards, Giants would have made the playoffs all 8 seasons.
Okay. So then I'm right to some extent. That's how I got hired in LA. Yeah. Because they said we're getting tired of having a payroll 30%, 40%, 50% higher and getting beat by a team that played in Candlestick Park versus Dodger Stadium.
Yeah.
And doesn't have the population of LA or maybe the glitz or the glamour, whatever people think. I love the Bay Area. Love it.
Yeah.
But that's the way that's why they hired me.
There we go. And Aaron says, "Dear therapist Ned, thank you for your insight in your midseason Giants baseball therapy session. This must be so foreign to you." In Dodger man. Oh, thanks. Aaron's a good buddy of mine. He's great. He's always coming up with some funny things. That's great.
Thanks,
Aaron. Raven donates 5, says, question for Ned. Dan and Lou always mention 2020 champ should not count. Almost seems like Dodgers should be ashamed of winning it. What do you think?
I think that's an excuse too. That's a Giant fan excuse right there. They could have won it. Why didn't they win it? They played 60 games.
Giants didn't want to win.
Oh, they didn't want to win it like
tainted.
that? Oh,
they didn't want to win a tainted one. No.
Okay.
That's us poking fun at Dodger fans in the chat, because we know there's several
of you. Find anything you can, 8.5 out. Find anything you can.
Hey, Ned, I just wanted to ask you 2 questions. First of all, just so you know, my family's had tickets for the Giants since they moved from New York.
You've told me this.
So when you bring up Candlestick, people forget, because my seats are on the third base. The visiting dugout, all they had was a bathroom. That was it. There was nothing else in the dugout. It was horrible. I used to have guys like Jay Johnstone say, "Hey, I'll make you a deal. I'll give you 2 balls and a bat if you can go get me some coffee." So my seats were in section 10. I'd bring him down. He'd get the coffee. He'd give me a ball. That's just how it was back then, but it was our Candlestick. But I wanted to ask you one question with the trade deadline coming up. Okay. The trade that was so secretive with Devers took 3 weeks. What does the front office do now with the Giants saying, okay, we have 31 days. We maybe need another bat and we need maybe another starting pitching. Do you guys now, a month before, or obviously you guys are working on maybe 5 to maybe half dozen guys and people that maybe people are calling you about it. How does it work now, like the last 30 days before the trade deadline? Is it just chaotic, or do you guys have a thing, hey, plus, minus, or how does it work? Especially like someone with Buster.
It's the best time of the year besides the World Series. Going back to Candlestick just for 1 second,
sure.
We used it to our advantage because we couldn't do anything about it. Yeah. So we used to tell players we were recruiting, hey, I know you don't like it here, but guess what? You're going to find it to be an advantage because the visiting teams are coming in here and they want nothing to do with it. And they don't have a clubhouse underneath the dugout. They got nothing. Yeah. So we use it to our advantage. And, it was driving by it now, I'm not in San Francisco that often, but driving by and seeing it gone, kind of.
Yeah.
The sign's still there, but
Ned, when it was sold out 64,000, place rocked.
Oh yeah.
So.
I used to ask, when I first got there, and we'd have, we had 96, 95, 96 teams were not good, but 97 we started to play well. And we got 60,000 against the Dodgers, and the next day we got 10,000 against the Astros.
Yeah.
And we're getting closer to first place. What happened with this? And I talked to the person who ran stadium ops for decades, George Costa, and I said, so what's up with this? He goes, well, this isn't quite a baseball town yet. We get the new ballpark, it'll be a great, great baseball town. He says, and people, kind of dislike baseball. They hate baseball, some people. And I said, so why do we do 60 and then 10? And he says, because they hate the Dodgers more.
Yeah. It was one of those things, because I thought maybe at Candlestick there was maybe like 12,000 real giant baseball diehards, because nowadays when you go to the new ballpark, they're only getting 15, 20,000, not tickets sold, but people actually going there just because but
during the weeknights they're packed in the weekends. So
so in our I don't know how many segments we got left here. I'm getting, my voice is starting to evaporate here, but to answer your question, Lou, teams are always thinking about what's next. They're thinking about it in April. They're thinking about it at Christmas time. They're thinking about it all the time. And you start to focus in, you start to fine tune it when you get past the All-Star break. You'll see maybe a deal or two. This deal with Devers was also maybe the biggest deal at that time of year since the trading deadline moved. But you're always focusing in, and you're really staying in touch with your scouts and your analytical people. But you're also staying in touch with your trainers. Stan Conti, who worked for the Giants and the Dodgers, and also was a very important person with Joe Montana's comeback with the Niners. He knew what I was thinking all the time. And so he would keep his eye on the little circle of players that we really had an interest in to see how they were doing. If a pitcher was pushed back one day, if a pitcher missed the start but never went on, they call it the DL, then not the IL, to pay attention to all this, finite detail. And you continue to do this. You sort through this stuff every day. And what Buster's going to learn this year, he's probably learned some of it now, and I think he's hired his former agent as an associate with him who'll be helpful, because he'll know the other GMs and president of baseball ops, and Zach knows him as well. But until you get into the last segment of the deadline, you don't necessarily know who's real and who's bullshit. Okay. Some guys are just fishing. Some guys are wasting your time. And some guys are legit. There were some of the guys that we kind of all grew up in the game together who were GMs. The conversation could be 5 minutes, and you get everything you needed out of a 5-minute conversation. The great Walt Jocketty, who passed away a month ago.
St. Louis.
One of the greats. He was in Oakland when I first met him, and I was in Chicago. Doug Melvin, Jimi Hendry, Brian Cashman, the late Kevin Towers, all these guys, John Sherholtz, Hall of Famer in Atlanta. We didn't have to spend a lot of time dancing around figuring out what the facts or what the fiction was. It was cut and dry. It was quick. You knew where they were. They knew where you were. Some of those deals took 5 minutes. I made 2 deals, I think, with Jimi Hendry. I don't think we're on the phone 10 minutes.
Wow.
Yeah. But that was just, we knew each other, and that's how we did business. And now, it's different people doing it and things like that. But you probably have more people involved as well. You got a lot of different probably checks and balances for your analytics, your scouts, all different things. We always consulted with the manager and sometimes the staff trainers, as I said, always. but you're always in this mode, Lou, and there's no chaos to it. There's the last half hour. Some people might say it's chaos. I thought it was great because it's like if you were in Vegas and they were shutting all the casinos down at midnight on New Year's Eve. No more gambling ever again. And it's 11:30. What would that look like? Right? Be people everywhere trying to get that last bet down. And that's what happens the last half hour of the deadline. People who've been BSing you all the way through, they come back. Or people who've been legit with you, they move on, or they said they would never trade the guy, they never trade the guy. And so you need to know everybody. The education that everybody gets at the deadline who's paying attention is you will know who's real and who's not. And people can change a little bit, but you'll find that out. It's almost like watching a hitter in the postseason. It's kind of maybe a weird tie in here, but I'll use it anyway. It's kind of like watching a hitter in the postseason. You'll know a hitter's weakness if you watch him in the postseason, because guys who can pitch are going to exploit the weakness. They will go right to it. If it's stuff on the inner half, if it's stuff on their hands, if it's up and in, if it's sliders away, you will see it. You may see it periodically during the regular season, but you will learn all of that in the month of October. And the same thing at the trading deadline for your GMs and president of baseball ops. They will learn so much about the other side and how they do business.
Interesting.
So it's a constant learning. Constant learning thing.
The great Cliff Martinez, who's a big Sharks fan, he says he wants a big session of Sharks talk. He's got a comment. In fact, Cliff and I, speaking of trades, we've been trying to work out a possible trade on our fantasy.
Oh, there you go. I love that. I love that game he's talking about.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. The night Bonds homered and twirled. Yeah. The atmosphere. I was at the this is well before you came to the Giants. This was in 77 or 8. Mike Ivy was facing
I wasn't born yet. Go ahead.
Up Don Sutton, Father's Day.
Sutton. Yeah, it was Father's Day. And I was sitting out there in those right field those seats that pull out for football in right field. And Ivy came up and hit a grand slam off Don Sutton. The score at the time was 3-1 Dodgers, and it made it 5-3. I'm not kidding. Candlestick felt like it was swaying. The place went berserk. And one of my favorite all-time calls on the radio was by Lon Simmons. It was just majestic, Lon's voice, Mike Ivy, a grand slam, and I'm just, man, Lon was my hero growing up. I loved Lon Simmons, and I actually shed a tear. To be honest, I cried when I found he died, because he was like a father figure to me growing up. Yeah. He was, I didn't have a dad for my first 5 years. So my dad died young. And so I had, my mom remarried. And of course, my stepdad, who's passed away, became a great man, but took a while to, learn him. So when I was up till my early teens, the transistor radio was my friend. The transistor radio under my pillow. And I listened to every Giants game. I was supposed to be in bed, and I had but I was listening, and the beautiful days back then is, I can't remember the call letters of KFI. Is it 640?
No, 560 KSFO.
No, KSFO, but LA. Is this KFI?
KTLA or?
No, it was KFI radio for the
610.
Dodgers. 620, something. Anyway,
610, yeah.
It would pop in and out, at night.
On a clear night.
And I listened to Vin Scully all the time too. And so I just, baseball was just so much a part of me.
The people who taught so many of us the game. I had Jack Brickhouse in Chicago, taught us the games. You know, just phenomenal. So the day I meet Lon Simmons, I know who he is. And I get hired in November of 94. And it's like December of 94, maybe January 95.
Yeah.
And so the Giants are having this dinner with sponsors and stuff like that. So they invite me to go. And we go to a restaurant. I was there just one time, and it was this night. I think it was on maybe the east side of Washington Square. Okay. And go in there, and I'm sitting next to Lon Simmons. I think, oh, this is going to be great. You know, this is, you know, I knew who he is. You know, I mean, I get it. You know, immediately, I'm getting a chance to sit around and talk during a dinner with him. And I didn't have very many suits or sport coats, but I had a sport coat on that was very light colored, like beige-ish, you know, and not like Danny wears now, or I'm sure you, Lou, wear these expensive stuff, you know. It was, but it was one of the only ones I had. And within about 5 minutes of sitting down, they bring around the red wine. And they pour a wine glass for Lon. And he looks the other way, and he gestures with his right hand.
All right on you.
And it goes all over me. And he looks at me and he says, "Welcome to the organization. Welcome to the Giants. I'll get that clean for you."
With that baritone voice.
Oh, yeah. And, I saw him for years after that. And every time we look at each other, he'd smile and he goes, "How about me doing that the first 5 minutes I met you? And you're still talking to me." What a great, great guy. Oh, gosh.
Yeah, he was wonderful. He was the voice of San Francisco, Lon. Oh. But Cliff says, have you received your Sodinis?
Oh, you know what, Cliff? You're right on.
Was I supposed to give a gift card?
You talk about this all the time.
It's a great restaurant, family owned.
Am I on the hook for a gift card? I don't remember.
Yeah, but sure. Wait till the prices keep going up. I was taken there in 1995 by a Giants employee, and it was like, what a cool spot. So
family owned, still no reservations too. You got to get there early.
Mark Sodini, the owner, and Anna, who's been there tending bar and helping manage the places. Almost my first time in. Just wonderful people. But I would go in there, and if I had dinner in San Francisco 500 times during my years working there, I had dinner there probably 480. It was it's just such a good spot. Still to this day, a great, great spot. And going back to one of your former partners here, Dan, Larry Krueger.
Oh yeah, Larry.
When he was on KMBR at the beginning of his run at KMBR, he would call me, to go on, at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, whatever, dead of winter, and I would do it from the bar at Sodinis. And if I didn't have cell coverage, I would use their landline. I'd sit in the corner. But just, you know what, if I'm blessed to know my last night on earth, and if I'm mobile and I can be someplace for my last dinner, that's where I'm going.
Solid. Wow. Hidden gem.
So thanks for the gift card there. That's great.
All right. It'll be on its way. The Sodinis.
Yeah, I've heard that before. Yeah.
I'll have to see I got to get a sponsor. Maybe I get Sodinis to sponsor this show. Maybe we'll play that little clip right there, and they'll say, "Hey, they should sponsor this." Two more. One guy says here he misses. Let's see. I love the Dodgers. Says I miss Ned and the Dodgers organization. All right, you got some Dodger fans watching there. So I'm sure the Dodgers miss having him around, but I get a feeling that Ned's a phone call away for some things.
Well, I'm going out there Wednesday night to watch a guy named Clayton Kershaw.
3,000?
Go after 3,000 strikeouts.
3 away, right? 3 or 4?
3. My first draft pick back in 06.
Oh, wow.
Known him half his life. And just, life goes so fast. Sometimes you don't pause to really look back and reflect as to the greats in the sports we love. I would love people to go back and look at his 1-loss record.
Yeah.
He has not lost 100 games and won over 200. He's had 1 ERA, except for his rookie year when he came up for a little while. He's had 1 ERA over 4. Think about that today. There used to be a big landmark for anybody getting 3,000 strikeouts, and he'll be the 20th pitcher to get there, hopefully Wednesday. The 20th in the history of the sport.
Now,
20.
I got a question for you on this.
Wait a minute. I'm not done yet.
All right.
And they say, most guys who strike out 3,000, they walk over 1,000. Greg Maddux struck out 3,300 and some and walked 999, considered the benchmark. Fergie Jenkins, who was the first pitcher I saw go at 3,000 when I was with the Cubs back in 82. He was right around 990 something, I think, at that time. Clayton's not even at 700 yet.
There's his win-loss
There you
record
go.
right there.
Look at that, 216 and 94. He's almost got a 700 winning percentage.
Wow.
Look at that. Look at the hits to innings pitched. He's got 600 plus more innings pitched than hits allowed. You see the 691 there? That's the walk total. He hasn't walked 700 guys in his career.
Wow.
Look at the ERAs as we go through this.
Let me check the
279, 291, 228, 253, 183, 177, 213, 169, 231, 273, on and on. Think about this. This is one of the great pitchers of all time, and one of the great people of all time.
Yeah, I do like Clayton Kershaw, even though he's a Dodger. He's a great guy. You could see it. I've heard him interviewed many, many times. Really a strong man of faith.
Yes, wonderful guy, great family guy,
and has a lot of great foundations. Does a lot of great work. One of the questions I have for you: if this does happen Wednesday night, with the baseball being the way it is, gone to the pitch clock and trying to, do they stop the game? I
bet they stop it for a minute. He's not going to want to stop very long, but they probably will stop it for a second. Yeah.
I mean, there's only so many things that happen, milestones, in the game.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, the game's been played since 1876.
Right.
We got 150 years of the game. There's 20 guys that have done
this. Yeah.
And there's maybe 5 that have done it with one team.
Yeah.
That's another thing. You look at the guys that have done it, some have been around a long time. That does not to discount the milestone, but it's kind of special when it's been in one uniform. As hitters, it's kind of special. Tony Gwynn was only a Padre. Yeah. Cal Ripken Jr. was only an Oriole. It's kind of special.
Yeah. What time Sodinis stay open till, Lou?
10 o'clock, 11 o'clock.
Yeah, 5 to 10. Ned, I'll tell you one thing about Kershaw. I think too many times people think too much about the playoffs. I've seen him come into Candlestick. Oracle, and just dominate. And I think what's great about him, it didn't matter if it was at the Ravine or on the road. When that curveball, which was so unique, sort of like Burt Ball 11, but from the left side, he could dominate. And I think probably in my generation, a lot of times people think of other Dodgers, Oral Hershiser. Oral was great because he had that streak, but within, one team, as long as he's gone, coming back probably 2 or 3 times, endurance, overall, probably in my generation, probably one of the top 5 pitchers of all time. You really got to think that because, a lot of times he was the ace. He didn't really have a guy behind him that with even 10 or 12 wins. And he'd go to ballparks and everyone would boo him. And all it took is let me just get past the first inning, and it was dominant. So I want to say congratulations. That was your first pick. You should have retired after him. It would have been easier.
Hey, Posey didn't turn out too bad.
I know, but congratulations on your first pick.
I got
Clayton. So I think, I think it's big. He's a Dodger, and you know what? This is what makes baseball so pure.
Amen.
Yeah, let's finish.
I don't know who sent that Dodger note in. It said, "I love the Dodgers" or whatever. No, man. Thank you for the.
Yeah, he says, "I love the Dodgers." Says he misses you in the organization. I want to end on this because I want to bring it back to the Giants, and we'll end on this. The Giants have lost 10 of 14. It's July 1st.
Almost.
Tomorrow, right?
Yep.
Okay, so you're the GM. This is you while you're back in the game, and you put yourself back in there. You got a trade deadline in a month. You're in contention. You've lost 10 of 14. Your team's in a tailspin. What are you thinking as a GM, Pobo, as they call him today? What's your mindset? Are you having trouble sleeping? Are you scouring things, trying to figure it out? Or tell us what life's like as a GM when a team gets like this.
Night after the game.
It'd be another hour to tell you everything.
In a nutshell, maybe break it down into 2 minutes.
Yeah, you're not sleeping well. You're never sleeping well. You got a lot going on. You're thinking about a lot of different things. You also have 6 or 7 minor league teams going on at the same time. Your emphasis is at the big league level, but you can't let that just evaporate either. So you always got a lot going on, a lot of different thought processes. The thing that is the most important, and I've said this on your show more than once, is you need to be honest with yourself as to where your team is at. You open this question with explaining where the team is at, what they've done in the last X number of games, how many games out, all of that. You have to be honest with yourself, with your team. Where are they? What are they capable of? If I go and do this, is it going to make that big a difference? If I don't do this, is it going to make that big a difference? What more can I expect out of this player, that player? What is my injury situation? It's like, we said this, I think, when Buster was hired. One of the most important things I thought for anybody is to be honest about your farm system. Really get to know who they are and what they can do and who your scouts are and who your player development people are and how they think and how they evaluate, because that's the business. That is the business. You have to know everybody and know how they do what they do, whether it's a player, whether it's a scout, whether it's a coach, whether it's in low A or whether it's in the big leagues. It's imperative. So you got to have knowledge, and you got to be honest. You got to be honest with where you're at. Otherwise, you're going to make mistakes because you're going to BS yourself into thinking you are who you're not. Game is too hard to be able to do that and have that come true.
Wow. Yeah. Do you call others sometimes that are maybe retired or just an old someone was in the position?
Sage and I had so many conversations, and Dick Tidrow too. I mean, we had so many conversations always. I probably talked to Sage 350 days a year for 11 years.
Wow.
All hours of the day and night, the long walks that we've talked about that Lou referenced. It's how we got things done. And Dick Tidrow was living in Kansas City at the time and with his family and, running the minor leagues, running amateur scouting. So it was all over the country and come in at the deadline and come in periodically and off we go, the three of us, till all hours of the night. I can't tell you how many cities we closed down talking and walking. And then when I left, one of the great adjustments, maybe for Sabes too, but certainly for me, was I didn't have that. it's going to sound weird, but when I went to LA, the person who I missed the most was me. I didn't have me. I didn't have a guy that was in the second spot at the time that I knew like a brother, and it took time to get that. We ended up like that after a while, but it takes time to do that. Plus, it's the rival. A lot of people in LA in the organization weren't happy that a giant executive got that job. So a lot of different things went on. But see, I'm a big believer that sometimes our curses turn into our blessings. And because of that, I had nobody. You said, do you call people who are retired or people you know? The people I knew, because I was not a job hopper. I worked 40 years in the game for 3 iconic franchises. I wasn't always looking for my next gig. I didn't do 3 years at each spot and keep going and going and going. I did 13, 11, and then 17, So I knew a lot of people, but I didn't know anybody well enough with another organization because nobody ever left the Giants. How many people ever left? I was one of the few people that ever left for a better job. I may have been the last or the only one in maybe 30 years. And so now that presents its own dynamics to how you think. But that led, and what I mean by, your curse, I've explained the curse. The blessing was my love for hockey and my interest in it and my curiosity for it, which I've always had parallel to baseball. And so I got to know Doug Wilson, who ran the Sharks, really well before I left. Okay. I got to know Brian Burke, who won a cup in Anaheim. Okay. Got to know him. Got to know Dean Lombardi, who was in San Jose as the GM before he went to the Kings. Ray Shero just passed away a month ago. One of the great guys. I got to know him through Tony Granato, another ex-Shark. I built this network of probably 5 or 6 hockey GMs that they found me easy to talk to because I wasn't competing against them. And I found them easy to talk to because, they knew what I was going through. It's a different surface. It's grass or it's ice. Salary cap versus luxury tax. But players are players. Athletes are athletes. Owners are owners. Scouts are scouts. It doesn't matter. Okay? Everybody has the same challenges, the same successes, the same things going on all the time. Brian Burke and I became very, very good friends. He lived 35 miles south of me. If he had a problem, I'd drive down there and meet him at 5 a.m. to get away from traffic. And we'd walk for another hour and a half, just like Babes and I. And then if I had an issue, boom, he'd come up to Manhattan Beach and we'd take a walk. And Doug Wilson, Doug Wilson would call me before he made coaching changes, would call me before he made captain changes. I got to run some things by you, all confidential, because he knew he could trust me. And I knew, I could trust him. I could trust Brian. I could trust Dean. I could trust Ray, on and on and on. And so that's where I would go sometimes, to just run something by him because. And I don't mean this to sound arrogant at all, but until you sit in that chair, nobody knows what it is. Nobody. And so for anybody to sit in that chair and call somebody who's not sat in that chair, and maybe is their best friend, and yeah, they're going to get some wisdom, but they got friendship more than they got wisdom. Only people who have sit in that chair and have been in owners' meetings and have fought with owners about payroll and have fought with different people, your head coach or your manager or whatever, the dynamics that go on there. Only people who've sat in that seat understand it all. So you start with a very small group, and then that's in general. In specific, I didn't move around a lot. So I had one former team when I was in San Francisco. And Sabes and I were like brothers. And then I'm going, had I gone to the American League, I'm sure we would have talked every week with his issues that he had, issues that I had. But I didn't even just go to the National League. I went to the hated rival. So, there were some years that, one of us usually had a decent lead over the other one for, I think, 8 of my 9 years as a GM. But one year we were neck and neck almost the entire year. We refused to say hello to each other the entire year. Nobody said we're not talking. He knew where to find me when they were in LA. He didn't come to see me. I didn't go to see him. When I was in San Francisco, he knows where the visiting GM box is. It's 100 feet to the right of the GM box. Was he going to stop in there and wish me well? Hey, how you doing? Absolutely not. I hope Kershaw breaks a leg. I hope Bumgarner blows his elbow out. I hope Lincecum falls off the mound. I mean, that's what you do. You compete, right?
Right. That's great. Yeah, it's great to see. Yeah, we'll have to do this another night to talk about the rivalry because there's a lot of people now that say well, the real rivalry is the Padres and the Dodgers, and there is more intensity with it. But I think overall the rivalry is still the Giants Dodgers. It's been down for a few years because of on the field.
Well, exactly right. If the Giants were winning 95 games a year, you could be 1951.
Yep.
Dodgers Giants.
Yeah.
And it's going to be as fierce as that. But when one team's winning 105 and the other one's trying to get to 81.
Yep.
What do you got?
Exactly. That's exactly right. Well, we got one last super here.
Don't discount winning, gentlemen.
That's right. We got one last super for the question. A little typo there. You meant obviously hit the M instead of the N. But Ned, do a deep dive. How do teams go through process of finding Latin pitchers who can throw in cold weather? Meaning he must be talking about playing in Oracle Park. Because since Latin players grow up in tropical areas, it's
not that cold. He ought to go to Wrigley Field in April if he wants to see cold. Milwaukee's got a roof, but it's something people have to adjust to. With every great athlete, there are many adjustments. You start with the home field, you start with the locker room, you start with the food, you start with the music, you start with the teammates, you start with the culture. There's all sorts of adjustments. You hitter to a pitcher to a hitter. Everything's an adjustment. So's the weather, and it's an adjustment. But again, I think I'm not big on excuses, Mentor Mac. I'm just not big on it. Well, we can't get hitters here because of the ballpark. I'm not big on excuses. And I think, is it going to be different for somebody who's grown up in a tropical region to go and pitch where it's windy and 60 degrees or April and it's windy and 40 degrees, 35 degrees, and they shoveled snow off the field before the first pitch of opening day, which I've seen. It takes time to adjust. But you know what? If you're really concentrating on your craft and you don't let anything get in the way between you and the hitter, you and the catcher, whatever it is, you get through it. Is the ball going to feel different? Sure, but guess what? The guy on the other side, the ball ain't heated for him and an ice cube for you. It's all the same. So everybody's going to have to adjust to whatever it is. And the best ones, they just keep right on going. They adjust. They don't even know if they're adjusting. They just do it by nature. And other people look for an excuse. Hey, I couldn't get a good grip. It's too cold. My slider was in Colorado. Well, I couldn't throw a curveball because of the altitude. So I gave up 15 runs in 2 innings. Okay. Whatever.
Yeah. Well, very good, man. What a great privilege and pleasure to have you on tonight.
You're welcome.
Some of those stories were awesome, and you'll enjoy. I'm sure you're going to love being back at Dodger Stadium Wednesday night. I for his sake, I hope he gets it at Dodger Stadium for his sake. I mean, I'm as I get older, I mean, still I'm a diehard Giants fan, but I become more of I root for some of the players now. As you get older, you start to see, I don't want to see the best players in the game out of the game. The Judges and the Acuñas and the Betts and the Kershaw. It's not good for the game when the best players are out. But when the good guys, I mean, I don't know any of these guys, but it appears that most of them are pretty good guys. I'm sure there's some not so good guys, but when Matt Cain throws a perfect game, you root for a guy like that. That is awesome.
No doubt.
And when Clayton Kershaw is going to get his 3,000 strikeout in LA, I mean, hey, that's awesome. That's just,
amen.
You don't want to see a guy like that do it on the road. I mean, it's great that, going to get to do it at home. And I love to see these things. So I'm just history of the game is awesome. Somebody sent me a thing today. Los, in fact, you've met Los on
Danny, I gotta get going, Danny.
Yeah, I just want to share this stat with you. This is unbelievable. Stan Musial, he sent me this, hit 475 home runs and never struck out 50 times in a season.
Yep.
Games changed. But
while you're looking at it, and I'm going to hang up here, but while you're looking at it, look up a Hall of Fame infielder. See you, Lou. Hall of Fame infielder named Joe Sewell. Sewell.
S what?
Sewell.
SEWE.
I'm actually going to hang around for this as you look this up.
Right, enjoy Wednesday, have fun, and have a beautiful 4th with your family. And thank you for your time, Ned.
All right, we've got Joe Sewell up here. Wait a minute.
Can you put him up on the screen?
I can put him up on the screen. Let's see. When did he play? Let's see. Joe Sewell. Okay, here he is.
Hall of Famer.
Joe Sewell, 5'6".
Okay, move it down.
Are we looking for his
year by year?
Okay.
Move that page around a little bit. We need to see the strikeouts.
Let me get rid of this ad here. There we go. We're looking for strikeout.
Move down.
Strikeouts?
Leave it right there for a second. Okay. 683 plate appearances, 17 strikeouts. Now, how about this year?
There's just strikeouts by the season.
Yeah, he had 9 in 678.
Oh my God!
He had 8 in 571. Look at that. This guy struck out 114 times
in 8,333 plate appearances.
Yeah, look at that one.
Oh my gosh!
Oh yeah, Hall of Fame player.
4, 1.
I've never heard. That's you taught me something new. I never heard of Joe Sewell. Wow,
there you go.
That's unreal. Today, guys strike out 114 times in the first half.
I'll see you guys later.
Thanks, Ned.
Thank you, Ned.
All right.
Good ending right there.
All right. Very good. The great Ned Colletti as he joins us. And guys, we will close it out here ourselves. So we'll be back.
Ned never lets you down.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's yeah. Well, we're gonna end it ourselves here tonight, just before the 2-hour mark, and we'll be back tomorrow night about 9:15 again, maybe 9:30. Maybe the Giants actually score some runs tomorrow night and actually make the game time a little longer than.
I sort of forgot we lost after having Ned. I sort of forgot there was a game and we lost.
Yeah, he's good therapy. That's why Aaron said thanks for the therapy. Yeah. So anyway, Giants rough night, and they fall to 45-40 on the year, and they fall back another half game to the Dodgers. And if we look quickly at the standings, they're kind of fading in the wild card too, guys. Here's a look at the National League West as it appears right now. The Giants are 8 back, sitting in third. They're in danger of falling behind Arizona if they get swept. I guess the one thing that I'm disappointed in is the Giants missed out on a chance for a sweep. Dwayne Kuiper said he was going to jump into the pool in his leather thong if the Giants swept. I think he kind of knew what they weren't going to sweep.
Standard.
But let's take a quick peek at the wild card and then get out of here. The wild card standings look like this. The Giants are now slipping further back in the pack. They're 1.5 behind St. Louis for a wild card. Again, that can be made up quickly. St. Louis did lose, I believe, today. Yes. So the Giants did not lose ground there. Padres... did the Padres play tonight? Yes, they did, and they lost too. So the Giants were fortunate; they didn't lose any ground tonight. In fact, I don't know if the Mets or Brewers played, but everybody's lost in front of them. So it's the Diamondbacks that are gained the game. So obviously still right in the thick of it, but something's going to have to change. And we get one more super from Rob. Drew Ellis better get on a red eye to Phoenix since he had a cup of coffee at third. They still got Wisely that could play third. They've got Meckler that they can come up and play second. Fitzgerald could play third if they need to. I don't think they're going to probably do that, but never know. No homers on this trip, Greg says. Yeah, no homers. Wait a minute. I think they had I know they had homers in Chicago. I heard them. Hunter Pence and they had homers
there
in
you
Chicago.
Go. In fact, that was the best part of the game tonight. I didn't have to listen to Hunter Pence. The game was on Fox Sports 1.
Yes.
But hey, Birdsong needs to come through tomorrow. Zach Allen can pitch at home.
Is it Birdsong tomorrow?
Allen. Yeah.
Birdsong tomorrow. Okay. I did not realize his turn is back up again. When did he pitch last? Thursday?
They haven't had a day off, so it's just constant now, it seems like.
Okay, here we go. All right, guys. Wisely, comment of the night. Wisely can play third. He just can't stay on third. How bad would it have got tonight as Wisely comes in for Cost a pinch run if he got picked off?
Picked off again.
Oh, my gosh. That would have just been no. I mean, they would have probably taken him out. Oh, gosh. Dan, how come you don't go? Oh, how come I don't go to a Dan? How come you go to a game? Well, I would be going to the Arizona game this week. I just had back surgery less than 2 weeks ago. And tonight was actually the first night I've been gone outside the house. And that was my wife and I went out for our wedding anniversary tonight. So we had a nice dinner and that was fun. But I'm not ready to go out in a big crowd because I had a hip surgery just over a month ago, and back surgery just less than 2 weeks ago. And so I'm afraid in a crowd of 30,000, someone might bump into me, and I'm not ready for that yet.
I did hear you're going to be at Oracle Park in August. Is that true for a ball game?
Yes, I will be in Oracle Park in August, but I will be a few months removed and hopefully, fully healed.
Yeah.
I'm still walking with a little bit of a limp. My gait's off because of the muscles. I'm still, I'd be fine. If it wasn't for the back surgery that was kind of more of an emergency, the hip would be totally fine, but I'm because I lost out with some physical therapy, but thanks for the Philip. Appreciate that very much. And thank you. Love the Dodgers, rooting for you to get healthy again. I appreciate that. Thanks. Yeah, I'll be back out there. When the Giants come back to when do the Giants come to back to Arizona? Let me look. Do they watch them come after my next hip surgery in September? Let's see. Giants come to 2 weeks after. 2 weeks after. No, wait a minute. That says Atlanta. That's not Arizona. Sorry, hold on. When do they come to Arizona? I'm looking at July. That's why. Yeah, it is. September 15th, 2 weeks after my next hip. So bummer. So I'll be I'm going in August to a couple games, going to San Diego at Petco Park. August 21, we'll see the Giants Dodgers, and then come back home to Arizona, and then I'll fly up to San Francisco on the 26th, and I'll head to a ball game Tuesday night with Lou. And that's going to be a lot of fun. Giants will be taking on the Chicago Cubs. Let's just hope it's a meaningful game.
Correct.
Still. But we know that the Giants aren't catching the Dodgers. Well, wouldn't it be like the Giants to lose a few more games on this road trip and then come home and sweep the Phillies and the Dodgers? It's like, I don't see that happening, but this team is, we may be starting to see some signs of what you
reality.
Lack of talent behind. You lost Chapman, you lost Schmidt, and you're not getting any production out of Adames or Lee.
You're not getting any of the starters. All the guys that are hitting. Koss is a minor leaguer.
Ramos is the only
minor leaguer. Ramos is the only guy stepping up from day one to now.
Yeah. So, but yeah, Flash, I could see that, but that I don't see the Dodgers going into that kind of a skid for the Giants to catch them. And unfortunately, they don't play each other as much like they back in 2010. They were playing
18.
3 series each. 3 series at each park. They played 18, 19 games. But yeah, they're all cold right now. Ramos is cold. Ned said it tonight. Hitting's contagious, and
it's like 2021 where everyone had their career year.
Yeah,
Ramos is having a great year. It's the complete opposite. Everyone's having their worst years possible.
Yeah, I mean, you get a couple games where they start hitting together and everything goes right. Everybody just feels better. So
I'll push stop, rewind, and push that play again. We've been saying that now for like a week.
I know. I mean, I'm not expecting them to make the playoffs this year. I'm hopeful, but it's a long season. I'm not going to give up yet. No one's given up.
No.
But we're so we'll see how this thing goes. But guys, let's get out of here. Let me get the music going here. There we go. Thanks again to Ned.
Awesome.
If we get swept, does Burrow get scapegoated? Depends on how you get swept. If you get swept, if you're scoring 2 runs or less in the next 3 games, it's possible. If you lose games, if you get swept and you're losing games 8-7, he's probably fine. But it's one of those things where everything's got to be perfect, I thought Webb was going to have to throw a shutout tonight to win, and kind of looked like that. Then Fitzgerald doubles, gets in 2 runs, and then...
Remember, there was an error. The first run was unearned. He couldn't throw the first base.
Yeah. Well, guys, he wants the Giants to be great again. Yeah, make it a rivalry. And knock them out of the playoffs at 21. Yeah. Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate you guys being here. Lee down to, I think he's 243, isn't he?
No, he's down to 240.
Yep, he is down to 240. 240. All right, guys. We will see you tomorrow night. Thanks for being here. Have a great one. We'll be back right after Giants game tomorrow night. Take care.